I spoke with Blake Jenner last week, and we were discussing something that he said he was going to call and ask you about. So now I got to know if he did. But I brought up this observation I had about John Travolta's antagonist character and just how disappointed he feels when people turn down food and beverage offerings. So I
Blake did call me. We become such good friends. It was quite a long conversation. So I'm not
oh
sure
good.
what you're referring to. Yeah, I think he very much enjoyed his interview with you. He did say that.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, I enjoyed it too. So I just was curious if you felt as he did, because Blake said that so much of the friction could have been avoided if they would have just said yes. Do you think that's the case, or is there just no common
You're
dispute?
referring to the scene inside
The car. There's the
yeah,
one
the
with
car,
Ryan when
right?
he
The
says no,
four-wheel
thank
drive.
you to the double espresso, and then there's
Yes.
Robbie when he says
And
no to
yeah, no, it's
British.
listen, it's classic. It's the classic eccentric stuff Travolta loves
Yes,
when he's playing a villain with zest, which is it's really happy to see him return to true form with that kind of character.
agreed.
Funny thing about that scene, and I guess Blake knows this because we were doing table reads with him and John on that scene. While we do table reads, one of the things I do is put a final polish on the dialogue sometimes. And I
Mm.
was tightening up that dialogue, and John was like, "No," he loves all the eccentric references to offering the drink in seasonal pumpkin flavored coffee or whatever it was,
Yeah.
and advising Blake's character to get on the first plane out of Maui. So that's actually a terrific scene between the two of them.
Yeah, I agree. It was kind of like this, like he took it as it was like this grand insult, but there was just like he has a process in place where he likes to kind of like make people feel comfortable until he's like, all right, now I'm gonna unload the truth
Yeah,
on
yeah.
you.
No, John is toying with Blake's character in that scene.
Yeah.
And John's note after the table was don't cut one word. He loved it all. I was going to tighten the scene up. Unusually for this kind of thriller, there's two very long scenes. And they're the two best in the film, I think. One of them's with Stephen Dorff tied to a chair,
Yeah.
and one of them's with Blake Jenner trapped in a car with Travolta's character. And it's John Travolta at his best.
For sure. So you're no stranger to the action genre, with you having done some of the films that served as some of my greatest cinematic babysitters, if I must admit. But
Well, thank you.
obviously, the action movie landscape has evolved quite a bit from when you entered this business. Is there a through line with directing action films over the years, and maybe what have been some of the greatest evolutions in action filmmaking for better or worse from your perspective?
Look, it's all storytelling. So I think action films are underrated by critics in particular.
Yeah.
If they really knew the effort and care that goes into crafting some of those scenes. I'm thinking about the airplane escape in Eraser, which used every trick from full scale
Hmm.
airplane prop sets to CGI to real parachuters photographing each other as doubles to Arnold on stage on repeller rigs at 50 years old. Fortunately, he's Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's in great shape.
Yeah.
You know, the technology changes, storytelling does not. So the only negative change to me, and I helped develop the tools for CGI back in the day with The Mask, wonderful film tools, but now I think they're overused. You start to get a sense of limbo, even with good CGI, when it's used to too great an extent. I encourage all styles of filmmaking. I love movies. Okay, that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
But when I see cars in a high budget car chase movie start to crash from one building across the street and make it into the exact window of another, and too much CGI is used, well, there's a limit. So I think when anything is possible, nothing is interesting. That's a
Mm.
quote from H.G. Wells back in the day, writing about writing fiction. So as CGI gives you more unlimited potential in action, I think it can actually become boring to see one building explode after another. When Superman flies through too many of them, there's a limit. So I think it's all about the suspense and payoffs on an action scene level, on a storytelling level, to keep the audience engaged and make a movie suspenseful. So I would think CGI is one of the greatest new blessings for filmmakers, and also one of the dangers of overuse.
Sure.
That's how action has changed, primarily as CGI.
Yeah.
For me.
To kind of dig into that a little bit more, there's a great inclusion in this film, which is the gag reel that placed her in the end credits, because it's always so fun to see like the humanity of these incredible talents, but it's also nice to kind of see some of the magic behind executing some of these scenes. Like there's a club scene with no music playing. Obviously, this is something that all filmmakers and actors encounter.
It's a challenge. There's nothing tougher than a dance club with nothing but what we call a thump track.
Yeah. Was that a strange realization when you stepped into the director's chair, or does it become this like fun game of a puzzle where it's like this piece is front and center for now during the production, and this snaps into place later, and let's see how it all looks in the end?
Well, look, that's the fun of filmmaking, and even the fun of writing, to go in and be able to imagine you're at a party and you might have not said the right thing to someone. Yeah. Starting from the script standpoint, we can rewrite and make you the wittiest person in the world by the time we're ready to shoot that scene. Then in the production itself, in the editing, we can make you look more and more glamorous to the point where your character is very charismatic. That's the craft part of filmmaking. To answer your question more specifically, I had been the person getting coffee, the second assistant director, the first assistant director. By the time I got to direct, I was just ready to go. I knew a lot of the basic craft. I learned safety craft working with Stunts Unlimited as a gopher coffee kid with them. So I was, I knew about storyboarding and making sure I knew the pieces to snap together. And the audiences don't realize we have to often shoot these things out of order for a number of practical reasons. The director's primary job is to have that all in his head. And the simplest molecular level of directing is just to remind those actors where it's obvious, but where this scene plays, where our heads were when we shot the previous scene, just to warm them up into the moment. So I come from theater originally. I love directing actors, but the technical side of film, I learned assistant directing.
So what would you say is your greatest source of like most of the magic tricks that you put into your films? Like
I like painting myself into a corner as a writer. Stuff I haven't seen before. It's funny. I think a lot of writers are cautious about writing things they may not know how to do, and I think the opposite. I think it's like being David Copperfield. You're breaking down an illusion. How can I create this illusion? Maybe it's the simplest practical method. Maybe it's a combination of practical effects and CGI. Maybe I literally don't show it and sell it with a sound effect. You'd be amazed how many times that has worked in film. So, I love the challenge of the illusionary visual bits. And look at The Mask. People literally had no idea how we were going to do that. I had a pretty good sense, or I wouldn't have started it, based on how my knowledge of how CGI was blossoming. It was just really being designed and invented at that point. But I knew how to apply it to story as I was inspired by Jim Carrey's stand-up routine. I'd seen him at the Comedy Store. I'm like, this guy is like a visual effect already.
Yeah.
So it's inspiration. I mean, the bottom line, it's inspiration. I'll be excited to see something on screen, and we'll break it down in storyboards, work out how it might be done. And then number one is always safety, 100%. All about making sure our sets are safe and our actors aren't actually asked to do anything dangerous, except Tom Cruise, who always likes to do the stuff himself.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of some of the visual or the special effects that actors bring to it, it's kind of hard to ignore the fact that there's a Pulp Fiction reunion going on here, and some of the intensity between the characters in that film are kind of flipped here. Like, I found it interesting that there's that line about Travolta's character talking about him and Ian meeting for the first time. And like, if you didn't have the flashback there, part of you would be kind of going back in the cinematic Rolodex to the scene that they had in Pulp Fiction. And there's like elements all throughout the film that are kind of like these very subtle like hat tips to their work. There's maybe even another film of Travolta's that kind of springs to mind. So I'm kind of curious, like, how conscious of those elements you were, and how
I'm a fan of these two actors. So I didn't look back at Pulp Fiction and I'm a fan of Tarantino's work. He knows
Yeah.
that. But I'm a horrible film student, and if I'm trying to emulate something else, it will ruin it for me. So I keep going to my own instincts and the resources of the actors themselves,
Hmm.
even knowing who's going to play those roles when we're polishing dialogue is very important to me. So if it's resonant throughout their career, it's because I'm kind of playing to my imagination of their brands, of
Yeah.
why I love these two actors, and less for it being something specific. And by the way, I know the plot twist you're referring to,
Yeah.
and let's not make a spoiler out of it, where you say it's reminiscent of something else. That was the key part of the story before I had John Travolta or knew he was even
Yeah.
available to the role. So, look, things evolve. Film is a chemistry set where if we cast properly and we got the right material at the right time in the right location, some magic happens. And in this film, that is the case for me, and I hope it is for audiences. It's a heck of a way to visit Maui
Yeah.
with these two iconic characters.
Yeah. One of my favorite scenes is when Ryan is talking or is taking in the Paradise, I guess you say Paradise City stash that helps him to reach within to have some realizations about his relationship with his father. Like, what were those things that helped contribute to the man that he is today? And I was wondering if I could ask you the same thing about your father and how he may have influenced
Listen,
your
man,
passion.
that's a more perceptive question than you know, because this is about fathers and sons. My dad passed away some years ago, but I had a very similar relationship with
Mhm.
my father that Blake's character does with the Bruce Willis's character who plays his father. My dad was a big World War II hero.
Mhm.
Tried to, I was born on a farm. He taught me hunting. He was absolutely flummoxed when I got into theater and started doing plays. He couldn't believe it. So there's the resonance between a father's expectations and the son.
Yeah.
And Blake Jenner does such a great job playing Ian Swan's son, who is not violent and will not kill a felon
Yeah.
at almost risk to his own life, which frustrates Bruce's character. And I think freshens the action genre up for me. I wanted to play that kind of character. Blake has never played an action film before. I bet he does it again because he did such a great job. But he's mostly done romantic comedy and drama, and brought a terrific touch to this character.
Yeah, I agree. Was there anything that particularly touched you about the culture and the people that may have, did they give you a new outlook on life?
I sought it. I sought it out. One thing I made clear with our producers is we needed to cast as many key roles with local talent. And Maui is not a big filmmaking destination. They shoot there, but actually more rarely than I even thought. But we got to use the locals in some key roles, and they were wonderful. And you get a real sense of the island. I also got some time with one of the cultural shaman who does ancient cultural traditions. And if you've seen the movie, you've seen some of that in the show. The blessings are as close as I could do them out of respect. And look, this is a fiction, so it's not a documentary, but it's all about. It's a little bit of a love letter to the people of Hawaii and the people of Maui in particular, to the actual aloha spirit, the very giving spirit, the brotherhood spirit that island projects,
Yeah.
the humanhood, should I say? And I'm really glad we captured a little bit of that love for Maui we have in the
Yeah.
film.
Yeah. I think that specificity makes it feel very universal, I would say.
Well, good,
But
thank you. That was certainly the goal.
yeah. I know we're just about out of time, but I'm going to cut you loose on this. This is my curiosity and probably the curiosity of a lot of people. But how did you feel about Jordan Peele giving that grand hat tip to the Scorpion King and Nope?
That was awesome. Listen, they actually sent, I didn't understand what they were sending me because Jordan was busy filming, and I got something through a manager.
Yeah.
My image is in that film on a TV set. It's very staticky, but they used a shot of me with one of the characters from that film standing
Yeah.
in for our Scorpion King crew with me and Dwayne Johnson. So I loved it. I mean, I'm a big fan of his work and of Jordan Peele's work, and I was honored. So I thought it was kind of cool.
I noticed that there was quite a few crew shirts and everything that went up in price on eBay, so that tells you something.
Not surprised. Look, it's one of the films. I'm fortunate in that it's considered a bit of a classic now. And when you do a movie in ancient times, it's easy for it to become more timeless. But it's one of my films I still enjoy watching. Dwayne did such a great job in the show.
Yeah, I agree. I just recently passed on the torch of my growing up with it to my son, so that was a really nice
Hope
thing.
he enjoyed it. I hope he enjoyed it.
He did. We love the
Fantastic.
Mummy franchise in this household, so it was special. But really, this meant a lot to me. I have nothing but great things to say to you, so I'm really just so appreciative of your time today.
Well, thank you for the kind words, and I've enjoyed this interview. Thank you very much.
Are you too stupid to die? You've been chasing me for 10 years.
I'm a little OCD.